welcome and thank you everybody for coming out. I know it's the holiday weekend, and so we really, really appreciate everybody who took the time to come out today. Today we are going to be talking to Heather Williams about all the work that she created in this series, Damage and Repair. I want to start off first by saying, Heather, congratulations on the success of the show. To date, we started off with 26 pieces in the show, and we have sold 14 pieces to date. So congratulations, hats off to you. I would start off by saying, how do you feel about the show? How do you feel about the work that you created in the show and just the success of the show? How do you feel about that?
Right now I feel like it has exceeded my expectations. And one of the first things I want to say is thank you for this opportunity to show in such a beautiful space. And thank you to everyone who has supported me in this journey, because you don't get to this point. I didn't do this all by myself. My family supported me, friends, Laura saw my work and she said, "You're ready." And I was like, okay, if you say so. And she gave me the support and the time to put everything together, and so here it is. It's been a labor of lots of love, I have to say. A labor of love for sure, because it certainly was not an easy task to create everything, because each and every piece of work, you as an artist, you put yourself into every piece. Every piece you take the time to sit back, look at it, because I'll let you ask the question.
Okay.
I'll start.
Okay, it's fine. It's fine, because this is about everyone here getting to know you and getting to know about the work that you created. So I guess I'll start off by saying, if you can give us a little bit of background about how you got started as an artist.
Wow. That's always an interesting question to answer, because I knew I wanted to be an artist since I was like 4 years old. And basically, the message I got was you need to get a proper job. And I understand that. My parents came from the Caribbean, and being an artist was not really seen as something that you can do, and then growing up as a young person and not seeing anyone who looked like me is also another reason why I was like, I guess they're right. So, but long story short, I was always a creative throughout school up until like middle school, and then from middle school all the way to undergrad, I didn't do any art at all, and I feel like it was like I had forgotten that I was an artist. And then it's so simple. I just needed like full-time credits. I was going to Brooklyn College studying finance, and I needed full-time credits, and so I decided to take a drawing class. And at first I was like, 3 hours is going to be too long. And then once I took the class for one night, I was like, 3 hours is not enough. And so from then on, I kept taking classes here and there. I never went for an undergrad degree in art, but I always continued to take classes. Fast forward to 2018. No, I shouldn't fast forward that, because this is an important part of my practice, is that I got a graduate degree in art therapy. And I worked with the domestic violence population for like 10 years. And then when I had my kids, I went and became a Montessori teacher. And then did that for about 8 years and reached a point where I was like, all right, this is not enough. And so I quit and went back to grad school to get my master's in fine arts. I just did not want to be like an 80-year-old person saying, I wish I did, I never did it. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to have any regrets. And I had the opportunity to do it, so here I am.
Now you touched on something that I think, and growing up in the Caribbean as well, I kind of heard the same thing as well, where you feel sometimes that you're discouraged from, following your passion in art and doing what you really want to do, doing what you're passionate about, because people think, well, it's not lucrative enough. You're not going to make any money, from doing it. Right. Do you feel now that you're in this space where you are, do you feel that you made the right decision to just follow your passion and do what you want to do?
I know I made the right decision because, for me, art is also, it's part of, I believe that art is healing. There's a mental health part of being an artist, and I couldn't see myself continuing the way I was without an art practice. So absolutely yes, I have no regrets, although it's not an easy path by any means. Not an easy path by any means. You have to, I think you've got to develop the confidence and the courage and the consistency and the desire to keep going, like no matter what people say about your work or anything like that, you gotta keep pushing. So I would encourage any young person who is interested in art to really to follow that, to be consistent, because you never know where it's going to take you. There is an audience for every type of art, in my belief.
And so as a parent, what do you think would be the most important thing to do if you're raising a child that's a creative? I'm raising a child that's a creative. My daughter, she's 16 years old, she wants to be an artist, and I have been encouraging her from day one, always, always, always. What do you need? What supplies do you need? What do you want to do? Follow your dream, follow your passion, because I think that's important. I think people who follow their dreams and passion in the world really change the world. So as a parent, what would you tell another parent who's raising a child that's a creative?
In addition to what you just said already, I would encourage, start developing your portfolio. Start getting to know the other artists that are out there. Follow people. Go to the gallery. During the opening, we had some young people here, and that was one of my favorite parts of the show. That there were young people. One girl was like 16 years old, and they had so many questions. And they were youthful and funny. Like one of them said to me, I was just in here spinning around, and when you spin, you see the work in a different way. She was like, you should do that. And I was like, I should. But at my age, if I do that, I'm going to fall down. And she was like, we'll catch you. I just thought that was so sweet. There was another young lady who was in here asking me a ton of questions, taking a ton of notes. She just got into Cornell Cooper Union. Yeah. So there were a few of them, and I love that so much, because if only, you can't go back into the past, but what if I had that type of influence? So I believe that because I did not have that, it's part of my mission to be encouraging the young people, and I think the younger you start, the better. Like I said, develop that portfolio, if you could build an artist community at a young age, I think that's,
In the right direction.
yeah, you're moving in the right direction.
So let's talk a little bit about the body of work that you created. Now the title being Damage and Repair, what's behind the body of work that you created for the show?
So I think a lot in terms of dualities, opposites. The damage and repair term came to me years ago when I was learning play therapy, and I was working with a psycho, the other person who, not psycho person, but she was a psychoanalyst, and the two of us were working together doing play therapy. And she brought up this term damage and repair as it relates to relationships. So that, if you have a falling out with a person, you can repair that relationship. There's always room for repair. And somehow that term stuck with me. And so when I wrote a paragraph about this particular body of work, I was thinking from personal out to global, universal. So, can a daughter repair? These are some questions I'm asking and exploring with this work. Can a daughter repair the relationship with a mom who was there in body, but not in mind after the mother was gone?
Mm-hmm.
Can a mom who has two teenage boys, every other day there's some damage, disrepair, disagreement, but then there's also realignment, and there's also repair, there's also communication, right? So, and then in global terms, what's happening with the Ukraine? How will they progress after this? Is it possible for Russia to change their relationship with the world after a situation like this? Right? So those are the kinds of questions that I'm thinking. But in the work, what I'm doing is tearing things up and putting them back together and reimagining it into a new piece of work that may or may not be beautiful. So it's about the process. So it's the process of tearing something up. I've painted a full abstract piece on a watercolor paper, and I might just tear it up and repurpose it onto another piece of work. Okay, so many of these pieces are created like that. Also, when I paint, it's an organic process. So I don't plan these things out. They happen organically. And what happens is images and bodies start to show up within the work. So when I look at a piece like this, for example, my original name for that piece was I turned it upside down, and then it makes sense because I started painting it the other way. Many of my pieces start like that, and then I turn them around, and then I start to see other things coming out of the work. So in this piece, on any given day, I could look at it and see, a face with a hand or a profile and different bodies happening. And then I changed the name to Non-Physical Teachers and Guides. Sounds a little crazy, but I was listening to this book by Gary Zukav, I think it is, and he talks from a spiritual sense about ancestors, and he calls them non-physical teachers and guides. So that's where the phrase comes from. So again, I'm thinking about ancestors and giving them voice. What images are coming out from the work? What pieces do I want to develop or just leave where they are? And so that's part of my process. Other pieces have little surprises and stuff in them. Some of them are connected to my Trinidadian background. I have a piece called Hold On to the Big Truck, which, you know, if you're from the Caribbean, you know that that is a famous Machel Montano song. In fact, the person who purchased that piece, we played the song for her in the back at the end of the show. And we danced. So yeah. So, you know, in many of the pieces there are little things that you may or may not see. And what I like about abstract work is that you, the viewer sees what resonates with them, right? And then I get a chance to talk to you about, you know, what do you see? And we can talk about, you know, what it is that I was thinking about. Another piece I want to point out is this piece over here with the orange and the blue. Someone told me that they see a soldier with a helmet and all this other stuff. That's not what I see. What I have hidden in there is, I call it double bind, because I'm thinking double bind relates to the position of, you know, the average black person who may, in one environment, needs to, you know, act this way, and, you know, code switching and all of that. That's what it's related to. But also, I'm thinking double bind in terms of COVID and having to take these shots, which I've taken my shots, but then my boss said, you all have to get the flu shot too, and she like mandated it. So I was angry about that because I don't usually take the flu shot. And so in that piece, you see there is a needle going into a shoulder. And because whether I agree or disagree or whatever with taking the vaccination, it doesn't mean I don't have some feelings about it. And you know, when you're creating art, you have the opportunity to put work and process your feelings within any given piece of work. So
No, I
I can
noticed
talk about all of that.
in the body of work, one of the colors that's predominant in a lot of the pieces, most of the pieces, is the color purple. Is there a reason for choosing purple in the work?
Aside from it being one of my favorite colors, I actually went back and did some research about what does purple mean. So royalty comes up, but also spirituality comes up. Not magic, mystical, I think, is one of the words that comes up when you think about purple. During the COVID lockdown, I created a series of works, and everything was purple. Everything was just about like dark, like this piece. In fact, that piece was created during that time. There's like 3 pieces in here that were created around that time, and I feel like that's the color that was comforting to me at the time. And out of that, then I started moving towards adding lighter, you know, adding some more contrast, and this is where like the oranges started to come in, and that's what you see now. So I feel like it's been a culmination of things. But also, if I look back at some of my past work, I've been using purple for quite some time. I didn't even think about it until, you know, these series started arising for me. And so I think it's been, I can't even give you a specific answer. Another thought that comes to me is my great aunt. She taught me about lens and the color purple and so on. So all of these things I feel like have some connection and some kind of resonance with me and come out through the work.
So I just want to talk a little bit about, you're also a sculptor.
Yes.
And so we have 4 pieces of your work here in this show. Just want to talk a little bit about that. Give us a little bit of background on the pieces that you created for the show.
Okay, so the pieces that I've been sculpting for a while, but now what I find is that I'm starting to get into mark making on some of the sculptures. Not recently, but I did the, Ancestry.com and found out that I have roots in Nigeria and Benin, and which I was excited about because Benin has a rich history of sculpting and a rich history of these sculptures that have the marks on the face. And so I feel like I'm connecting with that. Also, I call all of my sculptures witnesses. So, witness to what? Witness to past, present, and future. So regardless of what the name is that's written here, they're all witnesses. They're all connected to my ancestral roots. They're all not made to be perfect. They are made to give a certain expression. So when I'm creating a sculpture, I know it's time to stop when the eyes tell me something. That when I could look at the face and say, okay, I see you, then I know it's time to stop. Yeah. One more thing I wanted to say about this new series that I'm doing is I'm leaving the back open, and because I'm thinking about exterior and interior, and Black interiority. Maybe I'm still fleshing that out, that idea about Black interiority, and the power of quiet is something that I think about. I feel like they have a quiet yet powerful presence. I think that part of my art therapy background, we talk a lot about what's on the outside and then what's on the inside, and I want to leave the back open, at least for now. If that makes any sense. If not, you can ask me. Ask me to clarify further. Okay.
Now, what are some of the materials that you're using to create the pieces that you create?
Some of the pieces, there's different types of paper. I sometimes use watercolor, an acid-free, heavy watercolor paper, and add acrylic paint to it. Some pieces I start off with a plain background, and I might use a glue to do some kind of tagging underneath. You would only see that if you really look close at the work. You might see some markings in some of the pieces, not all of them, but some of them. And what else? Some use tissue or magazine cutouts, books, because I want to put words. There might be words, because the words represent storytelling, which I also think is important, because storytelling, I think storytelling is important because I always say it connects us to our humanity, and also it pulls us out of our isolation. I might tell a story and someone else might relate to that story, and it gives them permission to share as well. So
You see it as part of sort of us passing on our history as well, in terms of storytelling, the work that you create, and even in the stories that you get from the people that you know.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, how has it been for you juggling being a mom, working as an artist, because you're all over, you're doing a lot of things, you're also you have a documentary that you created, a short film that you created as well.
Yes.
So how has it been for you to juggle doing all of these things?
Someone asked me how am I doing all that stuff. I don't know. Wow, it's until I write down everything that's going on, it seems like, I'm just going, step by step. But it is a lot. But what I do is I have a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old son, and they're teenagers. They don't want me on top of them anyway. So, I mean, that gives me a certain amount of freedom. But even so, like before I started this journey, I sat down with my family, my husband and my sons, and said, listen, this is what I'm planning on doing, and I need you guys to be more independent. That's what I asked for in order for them to support this process. So I think the support of having them, also artists from my cohort from SVA, like I said, it's not, you don't do this by yourself. Michelle Black taught me how to make frames like this, and I just kept going with it. I don't take any of those things for granted. None of it. Talking to other artists, asking questions, support from my family, filling out those applications, asking for help when I need it is huge, because I don't like to ask for help. I don't, but you...
I'm guilty, I'm sorry. I did the same thing too.
It's a vulnerable place to be, but it's necessary, right? And like I keep saying, it's not just the art itself, but it's the entire process from start to finish that gets me to here, So I think I forgot the question.
No, you answered.
Okay.
You answered.
Okay.
So what's next for Heather?
What's next? Next month I have a solo show in Bayonne at the British Art Gallery. Next month I'm also starting a residency at Governor's Island. That's a 3-month residency, followed by a 6-month residency at Gallery of Faro. And in between that I have other exhibitions. So I'm quite busy.
That's great.
It's a good busy. It's really exciting, actually, I have to say. Yeah.
So I'm going to open the floor up for people to ask questions, because this is not just about me asking questions. So anyone has questions for Heather? John?
Yeah. Which do you enjoy doing more, the large format or the small format? Is there a particular desire or approach or
I don't
liking?
think I have a particular desire, but I'll tell you, before I started doing this body of work, I was a little bit stressed because Laura was like, you can do large work. And I was like, okay, but I wasn't used to that.
So your comfort zone was a smaller
My
format?
comfort zone was starting out with a smaller format. And so, what I needed to do was let myself be free to create the series of the small pieces. And actually, no, I started the big pieces, and then I was like, oh my gosh, where am I going with this? So I stopped, and then I started doing the smaller pieces, and then in between, I would keep going back to the bigger pieces. So I never finished any one of the bigger pieces like in one shot. It was a process of kind of working several pieces at a time. So
I have a question. Now that you've done it, how does it feel?
Pat on the back.
now I know I can do it. It's not as daunting as I thought that it was going to be, because I start working on the floor, and then after that I move, you know, everything up to the wall. So it's actually not as daunting. Like, I started this piece on the wall. I didn't even realize how, on the floor, I didn't even realize how big it was until I hung it up, and then I was like, wow, I need a ladder to work on this. So I know I can do it. I've grown.
As I said,
Yes, Laura.
you could do it.
Yes,
And
yes.
you did.
Yes. And in that sense, you helped me to grow.
Excellent.
Tiffany?
I think the pieces are beautiful, and immediately when I walk in, the first thing that came to my mind was I felt like I was looking at wombs. I don't know why, but they're like juxtaposition. I don't know what's the word, like a juxtaposition of wombs I saw. I know that's a statement, but my question is, I think as artists, you channel a lot, and you were talking about how about damage and repair. When you were creating the piece, did you have like an experience, like a spiritual experience, channeling that damage and the repair? I don't really know how to phrase that, but what was your experience like creating the piece?
All of them, or a particular piece, or just whatever?
Whatever.
Wow, that's a question. I feel like every time that I get that moment that I can really create, and it's quiet and it's like the world stops. I think that whole thing is an experience that you can't necessarily put words to, you know, and so when I'm creating a piece like this or any other piece, sometimes I take a picture of it and look at it in a different view, and then I might see like a face pop up, and then I'm like, oh shit, I see you, right? And then I put the camera down, and then I can leave it at that or try to, highlight it. Sometimes when I highlight it, I mess it up. So sometimes it's to be left alone. But I think there is an experience in it, because it's not just painting it, like it's sitting with the work and just like being with it. Like I could go into the studio and not even touch this piece because I'm just sitting there, like just looking at it, taking pictures of it, thinking about it, like asking myself, what's happening here. It's almost like a conversation between myself and my own work. I hope that answers your question. But one thing I will also say that there was a piece that I was working on, like I had a fight with my son or something. And so I was doing a lot of scratching, and I finished the piece, and I said, I'm just gonna leave it just like that. And it's that one over there, it's called What They Really Want From Us. Now, another interesting hidden thing about that is I used there's a face in there, right? And it's actually a face of DMX. And but if I don't say that, people may not even notice that there's a face in there. But I don't know, I might be going off on a tangent a little bit, but no. No. It's in there. It's in there.
It's almost like souls are like crying out through the pieces.
Yes.
When you said witness, it's like automatically like she's channeling.
Yeah.
And the purple, I know in a lot of religion, purple is connected to priesthood, like in the Yoruban culture, if you read the Bible, priests, they wore purple garments, so somehow you are channeling spirits through your artwork. And that's what I mean when I say it felt like wounds, literally, of the souls crying out to you.
I agree with it.
Question?
Yeah, I think she
Yes.
has for a long
here.
time.
Oh, okay, here.
So you talked about the themes of duality, and it seems in this series, duality sort of manifests as like a binary, you know, hot and cold, up and down.
Dark and light.
Exactly. During the creation of this series, did you ever have intervals where you saw duality as a cooperative or as a complementary experience as an artist or as you were preparing any of the pieces?
Well, you know, when I think about dualities, again, like, you know, they say you can't have darkness without the light, right? So, let me think of an example. 9/11, right? 9/11 was a terrible tragedy for many of us. However, out of 9/11, how much humanity did we see come out of 9/11? You know what I mean? So many stories of people who strangers helped them from nowhere. There was no questions asked. It was, you know, like out of tragedy. Some amazing things actually happened, right? So how do you reconcile with that this sad event is happening, but yet it's asking us to rise, you know? COVID is another one of them. If we weren't stuck in our homes, I don't know that what happened to George Floyd would have gotten that much attention. The entire world
So true.
saw what happened. Are we still dealing with the situation? Yes, right? But the starting part is acknowledgement and bringing these things to light. And so with damage and repair, I'm thinking about damage. I'm thinking about all of these things, right? But how can you take those things and also bring joy and dialogue and communication, right? So I hope that answers your question,
Yes,
right? It's
very much
not one or the other. It's both.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Edward.
Oh.
I love your work, first of all. My question, just to follow up on something you said earlier about your sculpture pieces, when you said they were witnesses to the past, the present, and the future, can you just elaborate upon that a little bit more about witnesses to what in the past, to what in the present, and what do we envision, and what could they possibly see in the future?
When I think about the past, right away I'm thinking about Middle Passage. That's what I think about, the Middle Passage. It's the first thing that comes to my mind. And everything else that brought us up to this point, right? When I think about the present, it's all of the, anything that's happening right now that's in the media, it's my reaction to our social climate, right? And in terms of the future, very often, I mean, we've all heard the term that if you don't know your history, then you're condemned to repeat it.
Nice.
So I feel like a lot of things keep repeating themselves still today. You know, police brutality is one of them. That's still going on. You know, but it doesn't have to be all negative. But I'm just saying, like, you know, if we don't learn the lessons from the past, then we know it just keeps repeating itself until
Well,
we
we
do
perish.
something different. Until we do something different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Another question?
Yes.
So I noticed that you talk a lot about seeing and sight. You look at your work from many different angles. You look at your work in a different medium and you're looking at it again. You choose not to finish a sculpture until you know that you see them, right? So it's like you have this very interesting connection with sight and vision. So your work, is it highly visual for you? And I'm also saying that because, like, also as a therapist, like, we hear stories and we're trying to figure out things based on what we're told. And then while it's being told, we're visualizing what the person is saying so we could get a very clear dynamic of what the repair can become. So I don't know if that's a question. I would like for you to really chop up what I just said.
So, you know, when you say as a therapist and we're trying to visualize what the repair can become, what about, like, I don't know if we can always visualize what the repair can become.
Mm-hmm.
I think the process is more, like, important. Now, I don't know if I start talking therapy stuff, I might go off on a different tangent, but let me see if we can connect it to art. So I had this kid once who didn't want to talk at all. And every time he came, I had a sandbox. And I didn't put any pressure, didn't ask him anything, just let him play in the sandbox. Every time, until we develop this trust. And so I'm not putting an answer on it or trying, or maybe it is by creating a safe space. Maybe that is the repair. Maybe it is. And now that I've talked about it, maybe, maybe that is the repair, creating a safe space. Because I think a lot also about safe spaces as well. And to me, this is a safe space. So, like I said before, it's not necessarily just about the work, but this is like a whole body that's been created in a space with my hope that we could be here talking like we are now. I don't know if that even answers anything. I'm just thinking with you right now.
I just like see stuff and I listen and knowing you as a person. And I'm like, oh wow, this is really dope. Like, let me throw this at her and see what she thinks about it. And I guess that's like my purpose in terms of like damage and my form of repair or whatever. It's just interesting to just have that conversation just based on what you're giving, you know.
John, you're next. Yeah, you're next.
First of all, I love the scale of the large painting behind you. It's a wonderful piece. Would you share with us your workspace and what some of your work habits are, like time of day? Do you have a lot of natural light? Do you have a lot of open floor space? Because you should be looking larger. I mean, I think that's great that you gave that shot. So what is your studio space like?
So my regular studio space is just in my basement. I could not create something like this in my basement. And the other pieces, I have like a wall that's big enough that I can I can work on the floor and hang the pieces up. Anything bigger than that back there, like 5 feet by 6 feet, would be very difficult.
So where did you do the large paintings?
I have a friend who owns a space in Hoboken. He's a guitar maker, and he's a professional guitar maker, a master at making wood. Like he wants no recognition or anything like that, so you would never see him around or in my videos or anything like that. You met him.
Yeah,
His name is Roger Boris. I can't tell you the guitars that this guy makes, absolutely amazing. So I've been fortunate enough to that he allowed me to work in his space. He has his shop and a separate space, and he allows me, not just me, but other people that he may know, to work in the space. He also has helped me learn how to like use the wood, the machinery and stuff like that. So if I needed to make a base like that, like the stands for those sculptures, I can do that. I let him do it this time because I have way too many other things to do. But so in that space, if I have something really large to do, I do have the opportunity to work in that kind of space.
And do you like working with natural light? I mean, you said you have a basement space at home, right?
The basement has a lot more light than basements usually do, and then we added some of these kind of lights. The other space has lots of natural light. The space in Hoboken has lots, huge windows, high ceilings, lots of natural light.
And then like a lot of the pieces that have the same, are using the same palette. Are you working on all of them simultaneously, or do you finish one at a time?
I work on several of them simultaneously. Yes. Most of them, I would say, I've had all like working
Right.
at one stage or another. Not all of them, but yeah.
John?
Yeah, again, as you mentioned this piece right here, and I see almost like a signature element, and that is, I can't figure out whether or not you add the white fragile tear look after it's all done, or you create that void at the beginning, or what? It's almost like you paint it and it dropped and it creates this, fragile. Maybe that's why you named it this way, but I see it in a few of the pieces, and just wondering how do you approach that demarcation of white, which kind of gives it a dimension or fragile elements, and if that was drove into the naming of this showing.
I paint the background first, and then I play around with it, right? And when I'm playing around with it, sometimes I want to create something that looks like a body or a shape or a form. So for me, this is like a full silhouette. But within the silhouette, there's other bodies moving around in the space. It's like going this way. There's a blue body. And a body doesn't necessarily mean that it has like a full head and arm or anything like that. It's just, it's a body unto itself. This black shape here is also another form or body, right? But then so you have these two bodies moving within the space of a whole head. And I just relate that to the mind, so things going on, because that's how my mind is. I'm always thinking, I always have ideas and so on. So that's the idea that I came too with this. Not an easy piece to do. It's,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any more questions?
I have just one question, sort of. Oh, sorry.
Oh, someone in the back, right?
So my name is we're just local in the area. So I think your work is awesome. But I was wondering because I noticed that you have some collage aspects. Apart from, the image of hair, I realized that, when you play it together, kind of goes really good with the title. But I was wondering, what goes through your mind when you decide to add magazine cutouts? Like I noticed you have like a fist there, and the person. I'm just wondering, how do you know, or how do you come to the conclusion like, okay, this goes with this?
I just start with what feels right. And that piece is interesting to me because when I look at that piece, well, first of all, in answer to your question, like I look through the magazine, sometimes I see words that doesn't need to be like a full story, but there might be some specific words that might resonate with me. And so I want to put that in there. And then, the colors or a face or something might resonate. And then I put those things together. And so this piece in particular, when I first look at it, I'm seeing like a big kind of head over there, but there's another face in there. There's a silhouette in there of a woman, a huge silhouette of a woman. I don't know if other people can see that, but I can see it. And that's after, again, sitting with the piece for some time. And because I had it up in my living room for a while. And any piece sitting up in my living room is still a work in progress. So it's sitting up in my living room, I take an oil pastel, I see something, and I go up and I just start, writing on the piece. And because I see something that I feel needs to be held together. Another thing that's important to me is composition. I've been doing a lot of, you were asking about my process, been doing a lot of studying and looking at composition and colors and how things go to, like there are certain compositions that make your eye go, yes, okay, or they just feel right. So my practice, I'm still studying, I'm still learning, I'm still exploring concepts and themes. I'm exploring with the materials, I'm exploring with the colors, and I think I want to always be doing that. So there's no like specific, oh, I put that in there because it, not always. Sometimes it just looks right to me. And then afterwards I might go back and do some research. Okay, what does this symbol mean? What does this color mean? Let me look back at my ancestry. What were they doing? What does those things mean? Okay, so there's like a research element to my practice as well. I think that's probably a lot more than you asked me.
And in a sense, the way the colors complement each other, even though there's a contrast, there's harmony there, and it's pleasant to look at, even though.
For me, there has to be a contrast, because like I said, I think, in terms of duality, strange thing, like the first favorite artist that I ever fell in love with as a young person was Caravaggio. If you know his work, it is totally dark. It's dark and light. And I've always found that amazing. So I have a lot of other artists since then that I admire, but that was like really the first person that I really looked at. Yes.
Quick question, just out of curiosity, because I feel like if I don't ask you this question, I may not ever get an answer. But one of the pieces up front, I can swear, that I saw a silhouette of a female tennis player. I'm not sure, but that's what I saw. And I was just wondering whether, in fact, that was part of your intention in one of the pieces up front. I saw the tennis player, hitting it, going up to the tennis ball. Perhaps I saw that because that's what I do, but I clearly saw the silhouette. And Laura will affirm that too.
But that's the thing, that I was not thinking that, but that, speaks to what I was saying before, that yes, it's the nature of abstract work. What resonates with you
Right.
comes from you, right? So it's how you connect to the work.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. You're gonna have to show me that.
I will.
I saw it
talking
immediately
about.
once you pointed it out. I did.
Yeah, I said it.
Any more questions? Because before I have my thing.
One
Oh, here. Oh, sorry. I'm jumping off. And then here.
I just wanted to ask you about the business side of art. I mean, you hear a lot of discussion about, of course, the artistic side, but I'm always interested in how you approach the business side and your philosophy on how you handle that. Very important for me to know that I'm not an artist, but I represent my wife as best I can.
I think that it's important to have a mentor, even if you have to invest in a mentor, someone who you can love and trust. I think it's important to connect with other artists that you love and trust, because those are the people that are going to tell you the next show, the next things that that are happening. I'm working on the business side because I have a mentor who helps me with that. I think that I probably will always have some type of mentor or coach to guide me with that, because there are specific things, there are certain things that you want to think about. You want to have intention, right? Like, what is your intention for every show? What do you want to come out of that show? Do you want to increase your email list? Because, by the way, my website is heathermwilliams.com. And if you go there, you can join my insiders list, which is important, because then you will get to know a little bit more about me. I write stuff that I don't necessarily put on Instagram, and there's a lot of inspirational stuff that I like to add in there too, because part of my mission is to be an inspiration for people. So, thank you. So that's part of it. Like, always know what your intention is for every show. Like I said, it could be because you want to increase your email list, you want to increase your followers, but you have to go in with that mindset, right? Having a coach is important because they'll remind you, of these things. So that's my short answer about the business side of it. Yes.
Heather, can you tell us what your intention was for this show then? What was your intention for this show? What was your expectations about the outcomes?
My intention, yes, is to sell work. That's important. But always is to be inspirational, which when the young people were here, like the way they were looking, I was like, oh my goodness, come to this talk and ask me some questions. Connect with me. I think it's important. Okay, so that's one of my intentions as well. For other people to get to know who I am, get to know my work, and to have dialogue I think dialogue and communication is extremely important. Those are my intentions. And there's more. To set an example for my family, for my kids, that whatever that they want to do in life, they should pursue, they should speak up, they should ask for what they want. So, it's multi-layered.
I do have to say something. One of the things that I really, really admired about Heather just at the open is that she took the time. There was a lot of young people here, and she went around the room and talked to everyone in the room, but she took the time and spent the time talking to the young people in the room. And I think that's so, so important, especially for artists. As you elevate, you always have to remember to reach your hand back and pull someone up with you. It can't simply be about, okay, I am where I am, I worked really hard to get here, and so they can do it too. You really have to think about how do I make the road easier for the next generation. And so to look at you, go around the room and talk to all these young creators in the room was just really, for me looking on, it was an amazing experience. So thank you very much for doing that.
It's my honor to do it. Yes.
So this is a little bit related to that. As an MFA candidate, as a student, did you have a particular thesis or approach to your work? And since completing that program, how has that thesis grown, changed, evolved, or reshaped since then?
That's a great question. As an MFA student, I was thinking a lot about the power of quiet. And I was reading this book called The Sovereignty of Quiet by, the guy's last name is Quashie. And it talks a lot about that Black women, for example, are not always allowed or, have the, what word am I looking for? Privilege to just be quiet. When we think about the Black woman, quiet hasn't always been on that list of descriptions, right? But it is a powerful part of us. And, knowing that is, it's part of our humanity. And I've grown up as a quiet person. I grew up in a household with my dad and my mom, who was there in body, but not so much in mind. And so I learned to be very much an observant type of person. And has always been told, well, she knows the answers, but she's too quiet. She's too quiet here, she's too quiet there, like all throughout school, too quiet, right? And there's nothing wrong with quiet. I mean, Rosa Parks was quiet. So, my thesis, I spent a lot of time focusing on who were the Black women who were creating during my upbringing, because I didn't know who they were and I wanted to know that. And then we got into the lockdown.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about, okay, well, what am I going to do? There's this uprising, I can't do a thesis show. And that's how my film became developed. Because I was not going to wait until the lockdown was over to finish grad school the following year. I was like, no, we got to do something. So, what happened to Ahmaud Arbery was one of the things that really, really set me off. And that's when I was thinking about, is there a safe space for the Black body? Is there a safe passage to move from A to B for the Black body? And so I built an installation in my backyard. It's 8 feet high and 16 feet long with 2x4s.
Wow.
I covered it with material, and I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do all that work. I had a handyman. I said, "Can you please help me?" He never showed up. I got all the wood, so I said, "I guess I got to do it myself." So I started building this thing, and then I had my my young son. He was 12 at the time, and so I created this video with him in the Safe Passage, and that's how my thing has changed.
Yeah.
You know, because now that video, I don't know if I'm going to be making other films, but I know that that particular video I will be doing every year as he ages, asking the same question with his face there. Okay, is there a safe passage? Because I'm also asking as a mother, at what point is he a threat
Yes. Yes.
to, you know what I mean? So it's pretty interesting to watch, because at 12 he looks one way, and at 13 he's starting to look a little older, and you know what I mean? Like you could see the change, like he's not the innocent face anymore. In real life, anything I tell him to do, he says no. And so, you know,
Jamira Bryce was only 12, so
exactly, I know.
when are you a threat, right?
I know.
That's the question.
I know, and I
You deal
started
with it
it.
every day?
I started it when he was 12, and I was thinking about all of that stuff that was
Right.
happening, right? So, but that started with my practice, my MFA thesis and practice. So,
Thank you for sharing.
yeah.
Yes.
Victoria,
Hello,
one of
hi.
the young people who is here.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Yes.
Well, I remember when I first came here, I always take notes for every single installation I do here, and I really had a connection to the piece's ancestral body and cocoon. And I know throughout the whole artistic process, there's a certain air of intentionality and things you definitely want to have, and there is a mindset of it going in. But I think in that, there's still so much room for spontaneity and like something organic. And the whole theme of it for me, like the whole theme of damage and repair is like death and rebirth. And I thought, like, coming here today, like, it was so befitting that, like, it's on, like, today is, like, the day between Good Friday and Easter. And it's, like, I know it's probably not intentional, but, like,
No.
like,
Wow.
it just really lends itself to, like, being on the cusp of healing, or, like, being on the cusp of, like, you know, between a death and rebirth, or, like, between, like, a damage and repair, between, like, you know, like a butterfly in a cocoon versus, or a caterpillar in a cocoon versus like a butterfly emerging the next day. So, yeah, I wrote those notes down like, you know, initially, but like it really, I don't know, it's just so befitting that it's, you know, that there'd be like a discussion for it today.
Yes.
You know?
I love that you
Thank you,
say that. Oh my God.
You're amazing.
I love that you say that, because, you know, I walked in here and I was like, is anybody gonna come today? And, you know, when you, and then we started thinking about this date, and that it falls in between, you know, Easter and Good Friday, and people will be away and so on and so forth. But, you know, when you make those kinds of connections, right, it's just so amazing how, I just see it as part of the mystery, the mysticism of the art practice. You know, thank you, you stated it so eloquently. Should be up here on the panel.
Okay, so I think we're done. Any more questions?
I'd just like to say just a comment, and you stated earlier that one of your intentions was to start a dialogue, and you know, with that theme, damage and repair, it makes you think about a whole lot of things, you know. I mean, I know personally, I started asking myself, well, how have I been damaged? And in the process, how have I needed to repair myself, right? And that's just on a personal level, but even on a more collective level as Black people throughout the diaspora, you know, we've been so damaged, you know, when we look at our history. And until this day, we continue to ask questions, you know, how do we repair ourselves? What do we need to do to repair ourselves? And so I thank you for, you know, titling this, you know, damage repair, because it does give you pause to think about, you know, just that concept, you know, just not only on a personal level, but also on a, you know, collective level as well, so. You know.
Which is also part of my intention.
Right.
Which is, you
Yeah.
know, to start from the personal level and then reach out to what is universal.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for your
Well done.
comment.
Thank you very much, Heather, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. And we still have more work available, so feel free to purchase a piece of Heather's work.
Thank you.
Thank you.